To decolonize Africa, we needed to firstly understand how colonization was structured in terms of right on top of the list is governance, how the governing of the community was structured, where was the centers, where were the centers of power in terms of managing the community. So we had a royal system that was working through consultative spaces with the leaders and the elders, the wise people and the herbalists and stuff like that, which was the weaponry. Herbs were not used only for healing, they were also used for war. And people would actually be able to send bees and etc. and manipulate nature to fight. So initially what you are talking about, decolonization, firstly we needed to learn how to decolonize our governance systems. As we have already discussed on neocolonialism and the colonial system, which uses the Roman Dutch law for management of the communities. Right now, Africa is using the Roman Dutch law. The question is, where is Rome and where is Dutch in Africa? So that law is misplaced altogether because you're managing people in Africa using a foreign law. That law comes with its statutory regulations. What is marriage? Comes with its own regulations. How do you set up your businesses? Comes with regulation who owns the land. That translates itself into the constitution, which many African countries think that they have a constitution. Meanwhile, the constitution is a brand new yoke of colonialism itself. So the first bus stop is we need to decolonize our legal framework. We need to decolonize our governance systems. We need to find the heartbeat of indigenous governance systems, which then becomes way of protection and running the societal issues and disputes and etc. And as we said, the issues of oaths, for example, finds itself in the governance systems, the concepts of jails and policing, for example, land ownership and of marriage rights and marriage ceremonies and certificates and stuff like that. You would then find out immediately you start tampering with governance and saying we don't want the constitution, which is a big hindrance because African governments think that when they put a president in power, the president will be able to act and do anything. But we forget that by making him president, we have actually put him on the yoke of the same system that we are trying to fight against. Therefore, the first format, first bus stop, first requirement of decolonization, how do we decolonize our governance? We have the House of Traditional Leaders, which has been left only for culture and entertainment. But all the governments in Africa, so sorry to say this, all the governments in Africa are crime scenes. They are all criminals in that they are looking over land which does not belong to them. The land belongs to the indigenous people, the kings and the royalties, who then sit their people in their various tribes into those lands. So when the colonial system came and they removed the leaders of the community and they placed themselves, they're starting to collect taxes from people as if they're the colonizers themselves. How do we do that? We need to go back and reinstate the Maasai, the Luos, and the rest of the tribes into their rightful places and let each place, each leader develop his own land. Right now what we have the capital city mindset where the whole country is collecting money from everywhere, moving it into Nairobi. So now you have a rich city, Harare, rich city, Dar es Salaam, rich city, Lusaka, rich city. And once you have that kind of an ideology, then you're causing migration to move away from the poor villages and everyone is running into the city. Now look at the impact on infrastructure within the cities. And unfortunately, many of our African leaders are not yet that educated to understand that the system that they're inheriting was only designed to occupy so many people. The water in this city was meant only for so many people. The roads in the city were only built to drive so many cars. The electricity was only for so many people. Now you have, after independence, a city which was built to live 300,000, 600,000 people. Now we're sitting on 4 million, 5 million people. And then we start complaining. The roads are bad. The hospitals are bad. The schools are not enough. But you're not aware that you have taken too many people into an infrastructure that cannot contain those people. And when you look at the floods that have just happened in Kenya here, it's a big indication of the limitations of our cities. And the lowlands were never meant for people to live in. And when you see a disaster like this happening, you must know it once happened. It will happen again. And so we need to start building new cities in highlands, in the mountainsides, and leave the plains for grazing and agriculture and etc. When you come to the Lozi tribes in Zambia, for example, every season, when seasons change, then they move upland because all the swamps are going to be full of water. And when the swamps dry down, then they go back to the lowlands. But now, because of civilization, some people have decided to stay in those lowlands. It has not yet happened. It might take 10 years. It might take 20 years, like in Kenya. It has taken maybe 50 years for you to have such a flood. But the day it happens, then it will be a national disaster. We say in our culture, water never forgets where it once flowed. As such, the concept of governance and rulership and how to guide and lead people needs to find its intelligence in the indigenous knowledge systems so that we do not give people properties in wetlands, in the swamps, where they're going to be drowning in water. That's poor planning. The lowlands, which can flood, you cannot tell me that you're going to build schools and homes in flatlands where we know that disasters such as floods will come up. So the concept of governance is important. You're not only dealing with the municipality, road construction, how do you house people, how do you settle people, how do you rule them, how do you arrest them, how do they pay for their crimes, how do they buy land? And so that whole concept of law, the judiciary, needs to be decolonized. After dealing with the pillar on governance, the next pillar is agriculture. Agriculture, we're talking about indigenous foods vis-a-vis genetically modified foods. How do we preserve ourselves as Africans? Do we want to live on pizzas now? Do we want to live in supermarkets? Do you want to live with GMO foods? Do you want to live with processed foods? And I'm glad that our generation is waking up to discover that health is not in fine foods. These traditional foods that we could think they are for the uncivilized and uneducated. In fact, the poorer the people are, the healthier their diet is. The richer they become, the more sick they become. In fact, many of our diseases that we are suffering from right now are what I want to call colonial diseases. We never had a problem of fibroids, problems of cancer, problems of diabetes, problems of opportunistic diseases, which are caused by poor immunity, which is a result directly of poor agriculture. So agriculture for me does not only talk about feeding the people, but feeding the people the right food. Right now, as we speak, many people's stomachs are full of food, but they're empty of health. The fact that your stomach is full does not mean that you're healthy at all. So again, you come back to my head, which is a diet, a menu diet. How do we plant these kind of foods? And how do we make them available on our tables so that people can be healthy? But agriculture is land. We need access to land so that we can plant food. And I want to challenge African governments to particularly start considering small seeds as a solution to food security. Small seeds. These are your rapokos, these are your sorghums, these are your millets. Those are drought resistant. You just plant them as soon as quick as they germinate, you're sure you're going to harvest from them. But this maize meal has only been here for the past 100 years from Brazil and etc. It was an important thing. Now, ugali, maize meal has become a staple diet, but it is not original with us. The one that we had with those yellow, pink, orange, purple kind of maize meal, which are small seeds also. So we need to do a seed bank strategy for agriculture that we harvest our small seeds, keep them in store, and start reintroducing them back into the community, because our health is our wealth. Without good health, even the richest country is poor. As such, agriculture is critical, because as people eat, so they become. And what people eat is what they become. And if we are not careful on agriculture, we're going to pay a big bill on health. The imports and exports can only come as long as our stomachs are full. We must plant what we eat and eat what we plant. We can't convert Kenya into a place of planting coffee. Who eats coffee? We cannot be planting all this coffee only to sell it, instead of us planting food that we can eat. So we must actually make an allocation that we get full first. And when we are full, the surplus, that what goes for export. But you can't build a community based on exports only. Here is the foolishness. You plant your coffee, you take all of it, they go and make coffee, they make chocolates. After you sell the coffee, at a cheaper price, by the way, because it's not processed. You bring back the money. When the money comes back into the country, you take the same money to the same people to buy food. Then who is stupid here? Whose brain is not working? How do you mess up the ground to plant something that you can't eat, only to take the money of what you have planted, what you have sold, to buy the food that you must come back and eat? Then we need to change the strategy altogether. And we cannot keep our land as a supply of raw materials, and yet we will need the same money again to feed ourselves. So the balance between imports and export, and that's where the GDP sits, that's where currencies sit. How much have you exported? How much have you imported? At the end of the day, what we are exporting is equivalent to what we are importing in terms of basic necessities of food. So what do you end up having on the table? People have no money. Their currency is worth nothing. Why? Because they're hungry. What do they need? You need to import oil. You need to import food. You need to import medicine. You need to import this. At the end of the day, you're just working for the system. So we need to find a way of breaking that cycle of poverty. And agriculture is key to unlocking the potential of any country. The mother tongue, I'll start off with mother tongue before I get to agriculture. Education is important. Why do I emphasize the importance of our indigenous language? Our indigenous language is a science of its own. It contains the language, the words for the trees, the words for the grass, the words for seasons, the words for stones. And if you look very carefully at those words, you find that there's a whole technology that is involved in terms of what this tree works. For example, there's a tree down south we call mususu. Mususu is a bitter herb tree sort of thing. And the stomach of a human being in the south, we call it susu. So there you have it. You have a tree that is standing here, which the elders called mususu. And your gut is also called susu. Is it not interesting that actually mususu is the medicine for the susu? And it is as good as connected, just like that. And so when you lose that language, and you call it antivicitas, what, you give it some Italian name, that they name it there, you already make the local people lose touch with the value of this. But education for me would be speaking to creating institutions of learning that introduce the young people to their own resources. You don't go to school to study so that you can write a CV. You go to school to study so that you can solve the problems in the community. Here is the model. Before you go to school, identify the problem in the community. Then go to school, study the problem, look for possible solution, have a proposal and a business plan of how to solve this problem. When you graduate, go back into the community and solve that problem. And while you are solving problems, you have created a business and you can charge a premium for your solving the problems. But we don't have an education system like that. We have an education system that gives you a degree. And the best thing you can write after your degree, I hereby apply for a job. I'm a team worker. I work under pressure. Really? And there we end up with graduates that are not employed instead of graduates that are creating employment. Why? With so many engineers in Kenya, are we still having a problem with electricity? What were they doing in school? Why are we struggling with medicine when you have so many doctors and pharmacists that have come out from the bush? Who amongst all these doctors tomorrow morning will go to the bush and find mususu and make for us a tonic that cures stomach problems. No, it has not been tested. It has not been tested by who? Because our fathers have been doing this for the past thousands of years. Which part of clinical tests do you need? But anyway, if you need clinical tests, then test it and see if it won't work. So the concept of education, we don't need an education that teaches us about the other. We need an education that teaches us about ourselves. It should be illegal for any student to graduate as a graduate and does not know what is underneath his feet in terms of the resources that their country is offering, the raw materials that are underneath their feet, the trees that are around them, the flora that is around us, and how all these are possible opportunities of business, economics, and development. Here is an opportunity for innovation, creating new products that are on the market, creating new drugs that are on the market. Education must educate us. How do we convert our raw materials into business and into industry? And until we get there, we'll be manufacturing fools for the employment sector. It means that, therefore, that our educational institutions are manufacturing stations for the colonial system. We are simply producing them so that they can go. In fact, a more reckless definition of education, as we have it right now, education is a passport to run away from your community and go and become acceptable in the colonial system. So learn as much as you can and get out of here. Go where? Go there. If they come back, hallelujah. Many of them died there, and many of them are still going there. So what we're doing, we're spending so much money as governments and as families to educate each other, and yet we never have the benefit of what we have worked for. Get to Zimbabwe, for example, 1/3 of our nurses and doctors have run out of the country. But how many parents paid for these children to go and study? How much money has the government spent on these people? And where are they right now? And who is enjoying the benefits from these people? It is the same colonial system. And then you say Africa is poor, when 1/4 of all the doctors in America are Nigerians and Ghanaians. The question is, if America is benefiting from their skills, what is the condition of their health systems in their own countries? Education becomes the weakest link when it teaches you how to run away from your own people. And you see them, we see them during holidays, when they come back home from town, these educated ones, when they fly back from the US with an accent and half, my man, mate, this. They can no longer sleep on the floor. They can no longer eat traditional foods. They can no longer do this because now they have been educated and they no longer understand these things. Weakest link we have is an education that exports you away from your own mother and your own father and your own community. And you spend all your life developing other communities and your own communities languishing in poverty. We need an education that is inward-looking than an education that is externally driven. The business and economics model is a big challenge because our present economics are based on lies. They're based on paper money. They're based on fake principles of stock exchange, which are not honest. We are coming from a barter system where we exchanged value for value. It does not make sense to me that you can buy my piece of land for 10,000 or 200,000 shillings and you give me paper money. And tomorrow morning, that paper money has lost value. I come back to you 2 years later, that same piece of land is now worth 1 million. Who was robbed here? You actually robbed me. Because you sold me, you took away from me what has value, and you gave me what has no value. That's why in the olden school, we used to do barter system. We exchanged things. We never sold land. None of us owned the land. The land owned us. From it we came, to it we were going to return. Therefore, land remained as the real estate on which all establishments went. And if we are supposed to do business, we don't do business that emulates Western businesses in terms, again, of just being suppliers of raw materials. We need modern African businesses that can do what I call reverse re-engineering. Look at China, what they've done. To go to Britain and go to Germany and buy those big yellow trucks, bring them into their country, break those things to pieces. Come to Africa, buy the iron ore, go back to their industry, assemble those pieces together and come up with some young Toyota, come up with all these things. But the engine was done by Ford in America. Now we have Toyotas from China and etc. How did it happen? From Japan. How did it happen? They were able to master the art of reverse re-engineering. So we need businesses in Africa right now that can re-engineer tablets, re-engineer computers, re-engineer cameras, re-engineer cars, re-engineer yellow fleet equipments, building equipments, materials, and etc. And these are the businesses that must be indigenous to Africa and be fully owned by ourselves. But they lie to us. The world of IP, intellectual property, intellectual property. But who talks about intellectual property when they've been stealing from Egypt for the longest of time? When they've been stealing from Africa for the longest of time? Who has held them accountable for intellectual property? The whole concept of people being told this is intellectual property, it actually only works in the West. The other day I was so mad. I found another American person patterning the mbira, which is the Zimbabwean traditional instrument. And someone right now in America is the pattern for mbira, which is our instrument. But someone grabbed it, took it to America, wrote a small little piece of paper, and submitted it. Now he owns the mbira as an American. So which part of this are we missing as Africans? If we're about to talk about business, let's talk about indigeneity, let's talk about enculturation, let's talk about organic African businesses. We want to see some of the Kenyan indigenous herbs on the market. We want to see some of the Kenyan foods on the market. We want to see the Maasai dresses on the market. We want to see the African way of life being packaged also in all forms of life so that we can benefit from our own intellectual property. So there are many millions of patterns that as Africans we have not even tapped into, which are waiting for us as business opportunities. Hence, education must open up a department in every school in Africa, the Department of Innovation, the Department of Creativity, the Department of Entrepreneurship. How do you do entrepreneurship? Just walk around the community, find something that is not on the shelf, and see how you can move it from the shelf. Look at what they did with aloe vera. Aloe vera, which we used to use for feeding our cattle and feeding our sheep and treating our wounds and using it as part of our cosmetics and etc. Poops, they found it. Grab it, grab it. Now we have juices. Now we have ponds, we have facial products, we have what. Where is the company? It is in China. What has happened? Now they've opened big fields that plant aloe vera. And they harvest this aloe vera, make it gel, what. This is for your face screen, sunscreens, and all Africans were running there to buy some facial. But you can simply plant this damn thing right in front of your house and do it for yourself. No, now it has been what? It has been what? I mean, look at rooibos tea. It's a tea that the Bushmen used to be drinking in the south to repress hunger and manage their weight. Someone grabbed that shrub. Tell me which restaurant in town in the whole world does not sell rooibos tea. But are the people in the Kalahari benefiting from their rooibos? Someone came there, grabbed the herb, packaged it, processed it, put it back on the shelf, come back. It's even amazing. You go to the Karoo, you can buy rooibos tea from a shop. When you are sitting next to a shrub itself that produces unprocessed rooibos tea. So where are we missing it? We need to harvest our indigenous knowledge and convert it into business. We need to harvest our fashion, convert it into business. Our entertainment. I still want and wish we can move quicker to the entertainment space where we can begin to look at sports and entertainment, where these intelligent games our forefathers used to play. You find this big plate which has holes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 8, 16, 8, 8, and you put two stones each, and you start playing, take 2, put them there, take 4, put them there, take 3, put them there, and calculate, and high mathematics, which our children used to play. Look at our children these days playing with joysticks, pressing things on computers, and you wonder, where are we going? And you say this is primitive, which is actually the binary principle of computers. The base 2, it's right here. It is something that we used to play with every morning and would win games and lose them here. Even our sports and entertainment has been colonized. It also must be decolonized. So we decolonize governance, we decolonize agriculture, we decolonize our own diet. When you're looking at a plate of food, you must look at colonialism.
When you look into your cosmetic section, you must see colonialism. When you look at your medicines, you must see colonial. We decolonize agriculture, decolonize our education. Stop telling us about William Shakespeare and telling us about Charles Dickens. Start telling us about Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Tell us about the Mau Mau. Tell us about the Maasai. Tell us about the Runzuri Mountains and Sese Islands in Jinja, where the humanity started and etc. Create our own narratives. Hey, you are created like this, like this. But what are we saying as Africans? We come from the waters. We come from this and this. And these are the kind of myth stories we need to put into our entertainment, into our films, so that we begin to sing our own narrative and change our own trajectory. We're singing more about violence. We sing more about sex. I want to do this to you. I want to do this to me. You get to rap and other R&B music, and you hear lots of swearing and cursing, commercialization of women, calling women B's and F's and what and what. It's all like cursing and cursing. And by the way, when you sing and when you talk, you are spelling. You're casting spells. Spelling. So these words that we constantly hear, they are throwing spells at us, giving us suggestions of what we must do. And this also needs to be decolonized. Our messages, you're right, had lots of messages. And inside those songs were moral lessons. Chefund, Shuro, Nagudu, Chefund, the rabbit and the baboon were walking together. They decide, let's play a game. This one said, I'm going to cook you first, and I'll take you out of the water. This one then went in, and they pulled him off and cooked. And finally, this one put him in the pot and put a stone on top of the thing and cooked him, and he got burnt. Oh, that's a stupid little story. Listen carefully. Watch the friends that you play with. You may end up cooking each other, and you may end up with your bones making someone else's instruments. So you listen to this language, though it sounded like it was just fairy tales, but the moral and ethical stories that were being sent through were as important, even as I live today. When I look into those stories, I actually find lots of support. And worse still, entertainment gives us the role models. And if we put the wrong role models, if we put the wrong people out on the media space, showing the wrong flesh, showing the wrong money, showing the wrong addictions, the children that are watching these things will not do far much better than what we have already given them to look at. So sports and entertainment then holds a very important place in terms of our health. You can't be telling me that you have a sport of playing video games. Now your tummy is the size of the tummy sits on your lap. Fat, eating popcorn and eating junk foods, burgers, and then we're playing a game. When I'm playing a game, we miss those days when apples were fruits and mouse were animals. Now, when you talk about an apple, you're talking about something totally different. Where is my mouse? You might think someone is looking for an animal. They're looking for something to hold in the hand. We'll miss those days when children were told to go and play outside and would climb trees and would go for a day with no food, eating berries and fruits in the bush, swimming in the rivers, boys and girls. I grew up in that age, where boobs and etc. were not sex objects, but they were breastfeeding centers for the next generation and children. It was nothing mysterious about women until such a time came when you were told, you're going to touch that. And it was done in a sacred way. We miss those days when mothers were mothers and children were children. Grandfathers were grandfathers. And wisdom would be accessed not through words, but learning our ways. And then our words would come to you. You talk about sports and entertainment, it's a space which was an edutainment. Not just sports and entertainment. It was sports, but with edutainment inside. Because while you were playing, you were actually learning. Pada, ara uru, chikokokoaja, putting those circles, and then you have a piece of stone in your leg, and then you'd hit it into the thing, learning how to balance and put it in the other one. And then our young ladies learning how to pick up one stone while that stone is in the air. There's another two at the bottom, then you grab them and you put them together. And serious technologies which were teaching us balancing, calculations, and etc., and dexterity in terms of understanding where you are. And when we lose some of these sports, and we replace them with Manchester United, Arsenal, Madrid, whole African continent is drunk watching sport, colonial sport, paying dishes, buying jerseys, some of them even flying into Europe to go and watch the finals. How much money are we spending on supporting colonial sports? And by the way, my definition of soccer, it is 5 million people around the world watching Real Madrid and Manchester play. 5 million people who badly need exercise, watching 22 people who badly need rest. And we hope that by watching soccer, we're going to be healthy. Unfortunately, after watching soccer, if your team loses, you may need high blood pressure tablets and etc. So our sports and entertainment, we need to start inculcating indigenous sports, bring them back into the space. There is a contribution, a genuine contribution that our sports can actually play. And if local businesses can put their money into them, even these sports can be commercialized. The Zulu fights, for example, the stick fights, and etc. Boxing is not new in the West. We're doing boxing here years ago. Get to Sudan, get to Ghana, get to Fenda in the South, and you see men still doing boxing, traditionally so. It's nothing new. Wrestling, we're doing this long time ago, swimming competitions, even golf. In Zimbabwe, we used to call it ndoma. Make these balls made out of wood, bucks, and etc., and then they would be hitting them, chasing each other around the fields. Those games are not new. It can come right now because I have a silver one, a silver stick. It's a birdie. It's an iron tool. Then we think you can look at some of these games and include them into our entertainment, then convert some of those into movies, convert some of those into competitions, and then get our youth healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally. Because sports has that ability to teach you also to become a good winner and a good loser, and participatory sports are much healthier for the nation. Decolonization of our health sector, it starts off from number one, which is governance. The regulations and restrictive rules concerning indigenous medicines, for example. You cannot just walk up onto the market tomorrow with a product. It must be approved. You are aware that companies such as KFCs and companies such as Chicken Lickens, companies that are McDonald's, for example, a McDonald's that is in Kenya here, McDonald's or a KFC that is in Kenya, cannot be buying chickens that are in Kenya. The chickens they are selling here must be approved by FDA, which is in Canada, to be exported here. So chickens that are being sold here could be coming from Brazil and Argentina to come here because your chickens locally don't meet the standards of the governing body that is sitting in Canada. That's FDA. You look at that problem on its own. Multinational companies that are bringing these rules and regulations into the space of health. Who will account for all the high blood pressure diseases that are being caused by these fatty foods that people are eating? Whereas our chicken locally, because it is organic, it runs around, it has less fat, less chemicals that are pumped into their wings. If you see the process of bringing up some of those fast chickens, you won't eat another chicken licken again, or a KFC again, because the amount of chemicals they pump into those wings and the amount of chemicals they put into those foods, that in 6 weeks, an egg is now on your plate. There's a fully grown chicken. Hell no. In the village, at 6 weeks, that thing is still a chick walking behind its mother, collecting stuff. And at the end of the day, without even being too technical, are we saying that our manufacturing of food has become so fast that we can't wait for food to be food? We have to fast track the genes and pump it up to make sure that it makes it quick to the table. Whereas our own organic foods, they take longer. So when you talk about health, health starts off with the governance. What kind of rules do we allow? These Americans and Europeans, they come here with fertilizer to put on our plants. But look what they're buying out of us. They're buying organic. So who must eat this poisoned food that you have left for us? So by the time I'm talking about health, you need to understand what rules have we implemented in governance? What kind of agricultural process have we put in place? What education have we put together? Who is making business out of our sickness and disease? Who is cashing in on my stomach and on my hunger? Ultimately, when you come to health, it's a result of a couple of principles that either will have been maintained or they've been destroyed. And health on its own is not hospital health. Health was daily living in the ancient times. Health was daily living. My grandmother, at the change of every season, she would find the aloe tree. Pick up that aloe tree, put it in a glass of water, the water becomes white, that aloe. Then all of us will be made to drink that aloe, the small little reward of ground nuts, because that aloe was a hackened, very bitter. So she would give us to it. Drink a glass and you'd have to drink it in front of her. Drink a glass, then she would tickle your throat to make sure that you swallow it and you don't spit it out. Drink it. And she'll give you some nuts. She would clean up our stomachs and clean up ourselves every change of season. She would cook as such. We were told as young boys, you don't eat eggs. Young girls, you don't eat eggs. And you don't eat too much peanuts. You don't eat too much this. Why? They were delaying our maturity. Now our young boys and girls, 3 to 5, 6 boiled eggs a week. Their breasts are already bulging out by the time they are 7 years and 8 years old. Our young boys, by the time they're 9, 10 years old, they're already having wet dreams. They're already fathers. Why? Because we're fast-tracked like those chickens. We've pumped in stuff into their systems and they're maturing faster. Now here you are at the age of 11. You're waking up already and your small little pencil is at 1:15. Do you even know what decisions you must make with an erection? Then you run around, by the time they're 14, 15, they've already made another girl who is 9 or 10 pregnant. How do you account for this? So for me, this plays itself, the health system plays itself into the very psychology of the community, that some of the problems we're dealing with on the extreme left in terms of teenage pregnancies and etc., they could might as well filter themselves way back into the health, into the agriculture, into the food, and into the governance. That we cannot be looking for solutions of how do we stop this when we're not prepared to come back and say, where did we miss it and where are we getting it wrong in terms of these fundamentals. So our health is in our hands. Without good health, again, even the richest man, the richest country can be poor. And as such, our health needs to marry into our technology. Our health and our technology. That's science on its own. When I get there, I get excited because health is one of the highest forms of science. Just knowing how to put that tree and that tree together to have this chemical solution that fixes that and that. I think COVID was the best place where, again, we needed to come back to a place where we knew that our chemistry is directly linked to the herbs that are around us. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry which the Western world is cashing up on. Therefore, health is not health. Health is a business. Someone is making money out of your sick body. And there's no way, if I'm running a business of giving you medicine, I'll be interested in making you well. No ways. Every time you're well, I've lost a customer. So I'll give you a herb, I'll give you a drug. That fixes this problem, but that creates that problem. When you fix that problem, create that problem. By the time you're 60, 70 years old, drinking these things like this, you now have a real problem. Where now we must start removing organs, we must start cutting things, and etc. So the health business for me, it's a very manipulative space. Real health is our own organic, industrial, indigenous health system, which included a time to dance, a time to hunt, go to the fields and plow, and after you have plowed, you are sweating, then you would eat. You sweat your food, you eat your food. You only did not drink your medicines and drink your waters. You were also eating your waters, your watermelons, fruits that have high content of water and these trace nutrients and vitamins. And so for me, health is more holistic in its technological form. That when we understand that by the time you are sick, it's too late for health. It's too late for health. And what's the use of life? To spend so much time making money and spend all your retirement fixing problems of health. Right at the beginning, spirituality becoming the total sum of how the human body, the cell itself, how a cell in your body is looked after, and how that cell influences the organ or the tissue, and how the tissue fixes and works together with the organ, how the organ speaks to other organs to make the body function. Now, when the body is functioning, how does this body relate to another body, to everybody? And until these bodies understand nature, and nature understands the universe. So from the smaller microcosm to the bigger macrocosm, we have this seamless livelihood of knowing that the whole world is not out there. The whole world is right here. And by looking after the smallest in the community, in the body, we've actually been able to look after everything else that spirals around to make the greater universe. And hence, those who don't understand might end up thinking, when you talk about spirituality, hey, you've become a spiritualist, you've become what. No, if you don't understand something, just shut up and sit down where you are. Because spirituality for me then becomes a lifestyle. Everything that you do, the question you're asking, how is it related to this? How does it connect to this? Why am I doing this? Who will be impacted by this? What benefit is this? What good will come out of this? How will this feel about this? How will nature feel about this? How will my neighbor feel about this? If Christianity would get there, I'll be a Christian again. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love your trees as you love yourself. Love your animals as you love yourself. Love your water as you love yourself. Love your land as you love yourself. Because by loving these things, you're not loving them. You are loving yourself. By polluting these, you're not polluting them. You're polluting yourself. By destroying these, you're not destroying them. You're destroying yourself. I had a free advice the other day for the guys who are in Dubai, after the big floods that are happening in Dubai. And I was actually admiring them the other day for their technology of seed planting in the air, planting some clouds, put lots of salt and sodium and throw it in the air. Then the sodium attracts all the water and what. Beautiful science. And then it rains. It rains. Yeah, we made it. Of course, in Africa, there is a technology also of making it rain, using herbs and roots, which our forefathers knew. And some people still have that science. But then you forget, as people in Dubai, it's not just about you planting the seeds of air to cause it to rain. If I was in Dubai, I would have told them, go to the far east of the country, create a forest for about 50, 60 kilometers, make it rain there, plant trees there, and everything else, and grass and etc. So that by the time you are planting the clouds, you don't plant them over a city. You plant them on the other side where the wind is coming from. And then you use the trees to protect your cities from the winds that are coming from the thing. No, alas, right in the desert, you plant seeds in the sky, and then the whole city drowns it. Some few technologies, these trees that you see around here, best form of spirituality. These are all living trees. At the bottom there, they hug each other. Their roots grow, and they hold each other. So that when one tree shakes, it also is protected by the other tree. These are solid foundations. If we could build cities that share common foundations, I think they would stand during the moments of storm. But since we are human beings, we need to find out in spirituality, how do we allow our roots to touch each other? The Xhosa, the Himba, the Shona, the Bemba, the Tonga, the Kikuyu, the Maasai, the Luo, the Egyptians, the Igbos, put our roots together so that this great continent of Africa, like a forest, can hold hands together. Even if the trees are different, cultures, different fruits and different colors, but when we hold each other at the bottom of the trees, we know that common history brings us together to build for us a fortified city which will protect the citizens.
Let's learn from nature and nurture nature. Nurture nature. Spirituality is us understanding that the roots keep the tree together. The tree does not keep the roots together. And when we water our roots, we're able to eat the fruits. And if we forget who we are, then we don't know where we are. And spirituality speaks of Africans holding hands together to build the future that we want.